Brace yourself, because what I'm about to tell you sounds like political fan fiction written by someone with a very twisted sense of humor. Keir Starmer, yes, the man who was supposed to be the steady hand on the tiller, the serious adult in the room, has just been politically kneecapped by Nigel Farage. And I don't mean a gentle nudge or minor setback. I mean completely, utterly, and spectacularly demolished in the court of public opinion. An Ipsos Mori poll has just delivered the kind of news that makes political advisors reach for the whiskey at 9 a.m. Starmer and Farage are now dead even at 30% when voters are asked who would make the better prime minister. That's not just a polling shift. That's a political equivalent of watching David beat Goliath, except David's wearing a blazer from Marks and Spencer and has very strong opinions about the European Union. Picture the scene in Downing Street right now. Starmer's probably staring at these numbers like someone who's just discovered their life savings have been invested in a company that makes chocolate teapots. Because this isn't a sudden collapse. This is a slow-motion political assassination that's been months in the making. Let's rewind the political horror movie, shall we? Back in December 2024, Starmer held a comfortable 12-point lead over Farage. No problem, his advisors probably said. Farage is yesterday's man, a political relic from the Brexit era. By March 2025, that lead had shrunk to 11 points. Still manageable, right? July brought it down to 8 points, getting a bit concerning now. And September? Complete parity. It's like watching someone's political career deflate faster than a punctured balloon at a children's party. But here's where this story gets absolutely delicious from a pure political drama perspective. The speed of this reversal isn't just embarrassing for Starmer, it's historically unprecedented. We're watching a sitting prime minister lose his polling advantage to someone who doesn't even hold elected office at the speed of political light. Now, you might be thinking, surely this is just about name recognition or protest voting. Oh, how wonderfully naive that would be. Because when you dig into these numbers, the picture gets even more devastating for Team Starmer. The percentage of people saying neither candidate would make a better PM has dropped to just 30%. That means 70% of voters are actively choosing between these two, and half of them are picking the guy who used to be famous primarily for holding a pint and pointing at things. But wait, it gets worse for Starmer, and by worse, I mean absolutely catastrophic. While his managed to maintain a 12-point lead over Tory leader Kemi, which is like being proud you can outrun someone who's wearing concrete boots, is actually trailing Andy Burnham, the mayor of Greater Manchester, by 5 points. That's right, a regional mayor is polling better as potential prime minister than the actual prime minister. It's like being beaten in a cooking competition by someone who only knows how to make beans on toast. And speaking of Burnham, here's where the political chess game gets really interesting. Farage leads Burnham by 3 points, creating a political triangle that would make even the most seasoned Westminster watchers dizzy. It's like musical chairs, except the music never stops and one of the chairs is on fire. The psychological warfare element of this situation is particularly brutal. Farage's net popularity sits at -12, which sounds terrible until you realize it's a whopping 21 points better than Starmer's rating. That's not just being unpopular, that's being so unpopular that someone else's unpopularity looks like a masterclass in public relations by comparison. Think about what this means for Starmer's entire political identity. He built his career on being the sensible alternative, the grown-up who would restore competence to British politics after the chaos of recent years. Instead, he's managed to make Nigel Farage look like a viable option for Prime Minister. That's not just political failure. That's political alchemy in reverse, turning gold into lead while everyone watches in horrified fascination. The trajectory of this polling collapse tells a story that should terrify anyone in Labour HQ. This isn't a blip or a bad news cycle that will blow over. This is a sustained, methodical erosion of Starmer's political authority that shows no signs of slowing down. Every month brings worse numbers. Every poll shows Farage gaining ground, and every strategy meeting probably feels like trying to rearrange deck chairs on the Titanic. But here's the most fascinating aspect of this entire political car crash. Farage is achieving all this without holding any real power. He's conducting a masterclass in opposition politics while Starmer struggles with the actual business of governing. It's like watching someone win a boxing match from the sidelines while their opponent beats themselves up in the ring. The implications of this polling shift extend far beyond just personal ratings. We're potentially witnessing the complete realignment of British politics in real time. The traditional assumption that voters will eventually return to Labour or Conservative options is being shattered by someone who was supposed to be a political footnote after Brexit was completed. What makes this particularly painful for Starmer is the timing. Just when Labour should be establishing itself as a credible long-term government, building the kind of political capital that sustained parties in power for decades, they are instead hemorrhaging support to someone who most political commentators had written off as irrelevant to post-Brexit politics. The cruel irony is that Starmer's entire political persona was built around being the anti-chaos candidate. He was supposed to bring stability, competence, and boring reliability to British politics. Instead, he's managed to create a situation where Nigel Farage looks like the stable option. That's not just political incompetence. That's turning the entire British political spectrum upside down and inside out. For Labour strategists, this must feel like watching their entire worldview collapse in slow motion. All their assumptions about what voters want, all their careful positioning and messaging, all their plans to sustain political dominance, it's all being demolished by a man whose primary political achievement was convincing Britain to leave the European Union. The most terrifying aspect of this Starmer's team is that there's no obvious way to reverse this trend. You can't simply rebrand your way out of this level of political rejection. You can't policy your way back to relevance when voters have fundamentally decided they prefer someone else entirely. And while Farage might have his own challenges, that separate poll mentioned in the briefing suggests not everything is perfect in Reform UK land. The momentum is clearly moving in his direction, while Starmer looks increasingly like someone trying to swim upstream in a political tsunami. Thanks for watching UK Secrets. Subscribe now before we need government permission to discuss polling data.